Well, it is a glorious spring day here in New York City. It feels almost like a summer day. And today I've decided to go check out something that is sort of unique to New York here in the United States, which is the media circus. And I've lived in New York probably most of my life at this point, and I think I almost take for granted that there's always something going on in this town. You know, whether it's related to terrorism, celebrity, some sort of political scandal. And I have such easy access to it. And, you know, I debate now whether I'm gonna live in New York for all that much longer. And I kind of think like I need to make a bucket list and start just doing all the things I've never done. I've had friends that have come here from Europe for less than a week and have done things like go to a Knicks game or go to the top of the Empire State Building or go to the Statue of Liberty, go to Yankee Stadium, and I've never done any of these things. I have, however, participated in as a photographer years ago, or just been a witness to crazy just media situations. So today I'm getting on the train and I'm going into Manhattan for one such media circus. Here we go. Okay, last stop, and now hopefully we'll get to where we're going. I'm not sure how far we'll get, but we're gonna give it a try. Looking for a media spectacle, and we are going to 100 Center Street, and I hope I can show you guys what that is if I can get close enough. There, this is Center Street right here. We are here in Chinatown, walking towards a courthouse where there is a major proceeding going on today. And let's see if it's still going on. Let's see what we can see. Okay, so stopped at the very first barricade. A police officer told me I was not welcome in the press bullpen that had been set up from across the courthouse. And he said I had to go around the block to the park. So we'll see what we can see. I'm not expecting anything, but you never know. I considered actually trying to look for my old press pass from my news photographer days, but then I was like, you know what, I want to do this purely just as like a little YouTube adventure without any kind of unfair advantage. So this is exactly what I had pictured. This is the media circus. Here you have the van for New York One, the beloved New York City local cable news, and you have just about everybody else, and they are here for the Trump criminal trial. And today is day one of jury selection. And I just read a headline on Google News last night that this was happening today. And I thought I would come down here, honestly, just for the hell of it, just to kind of see what the deal was. And you can see there are other onlookers here, other just curious members of the public, looky-loos as they used to be called back in the day. And a lot of barriers and yeah, a lot of security. So part of what marks today significant, if you've been reading out of the headlines, is that this is the first time in American history that a former president has been charged with in a criminal case. So this is not political, at least not on the surface. It is a criminal fraud case. It has to do with what they're calling hush money that Trump had paid before he was president, after he was president, to try and shut down any potential public scandals. And this is an interesting little scene here, I have to say. So according to what I've read, they are trying to select from 500 potential jurors, and they're really worried about inherent and implicit bias among the jurors, not in terms of who they voted for, but I read like one of the qualifiers is to try and suss out if they've ever attended a pro or anti-Trump rally, for example. And one of the concerns about the trial in terms of fairness has been that it's taking place here in Manhattan, and the jurors have to be pooled from the residents of the borough of Manhattan, what is alternately known as New York County, which is a little bit of a fun fact. I actually have, as I said, I've lived in New York most of my life, and I just recently learned that Manhattan is also New York County, in the way that Queens is Queens County and Brooklyn is Kings County. All in all, the vibe here today is actually a little bit mellower than I expected. I was thinking that there might be pro and anti-Trump demonstrators. There don't really seem to be. There are a couple of eccentrics walking around, as to be expected, but I think everyone's waiting to see now is, I think the press are kind of perched to see if they can get a glimpse of him coming out of the courthouse. I think where the public are allowed, in the park where I'm standing, it's definitely too far away. I did bring my digital SLR with a zoom lens just in case. Get a shot of the orange man himself. But yeah, it's a wildly beautiful day here. Now, I've gotten a good bit closer here to the Manhattan Criminal Court, closer to the press pen, and right now there's nothing really going on. Just a lot of generators humming, a lot of cameramen kind of standing around. Everyone. It feels like everyone is sort of waiting for something to happen, and that's why I came down here. And this kind of content is, of course, out of character for this channel, but I just kind of figured, what the hell? I live in New York. I might as well come here and check it out. And it's, I feel like sometimes I take living here for granted with all the stuff that's going on here. I mean, there's media here from all over the world. There are people from, the European Union and South America. I've heard Danish, German, Spanish, and for me, it's just, what's normally a short subway ride away, although today was excruciatingly long. But the judge presiding over the case is named Juan Merchan, and he is saying that he is not going to take in some of the assault charges against Trump and some of his allegations of sexually inappropriate or worse behavior. I'm not sure what I can say here on YouTube. He says that he doesn't want to have a trial within a trial, that this trial is just to be about financial crimes, of paying out hush money to former paramours or consiglieres and the like. And the judge doesn't want this to spiral into being about something else, which is kind of understandable. I also read a juicy bit that the judge's daughter works for a consulting company that is involved with either the Democratic Party, the DNC, or prominent Democratic politicians. Trump's defense has tried to say that that was a potential conflict of interest and that the judge should recuse himself, but that is not happening. There hasn't been any definitive conflict of interest between the judge's grown daughter and the judge's track record as someone who's, a fair justice presiding over the criminal court here. This criminal court building here is a bit of a brutalist edifice. It is, just noting I've passed by this building like my whole life, and I've never really put that much thought into it, but it is a god-awful ugly building. And here I was talking about the internationalism of the coverage of the trial. We've got somebody, the gentleman behind me is doing a live report in Arabic. There's people, tons of languages are being spoken down here. According to what I read this morning, the phalanx of security for the trial is 3-layered. The Secret Service are protecting the discredited former president. The New York City Police Department is, of course, manning the streets, the press barricades, and traffic. And the court police are dealing with the interior of the court and the immediate exterior, but before the NYPD sort of front line starts. So it's a bit of it's at least a mildly convoluted security situation because this involves an ex-president. It is now about 3:50, and I'm imagining, like any city office, the court closes probably at exactly 5 o'clock. And I think right now it is likely a waiting game where the press corps are hoping to catch a glimpse of Trump coming out of the courthouse. And until then, it's just some eccentrics yelling and a lot of standing around. One thing that makes this city incredibly special, unique, and also sometimes awful, is that there is always something going on here. And that can't be said for a lot of other places. The good, the bad, and the ugly. In New York City, there's always something happening. And there's always something for the media to cover. And I'll say that I've been a part of that over the years. I was a newspaper photographer in the 2000s and 2010s for quite a long time. I had an agent here on 30th Street in Manhattan, and I have had newspaper photos published all over the EU and even as far away as China. So yeah, I've been a part of this world, and if I do end up leaving New York, you know, I think there's a part of me that's going to miss this. And there's also another side to me that will probably be glad to get away from this melee that's always erupting for one reason or another. Part of the drama of this impending trial is that the stakes couldn't possibly be higher, in that it's only months away from the November 2024 presidential election, where you have an enfeebled Democrat, Biden, and a belligerent Republican, Trump, two elderly men who are part of what is now known as our political gerontocracy. America is being run essentially by a geriatric class. And it's gotten to the point, things have gotten so out of hand in that regard that people are now talking about that there should be age limits on holding political office. The way that there is an age limit that you have to be at least 35 to run for president. People are now saying, I've had just friends of mine have said, you know, that maybe presidents, you shouldn't be able to be like over 70 and still hold, you know, the presidential office, or even, you know, the Senate and the House. I mean, it's gotten really bad. You know, we've gotten a lot of people in their 80s, and you can't be sure of people's health at that point. You know, not trying to be ageist, but I mean, just look at how old and out of touch a lot of these politicians are on both sides of the aisle. It's a bad situation. Okay, now there's talk in the press pen that the day could possibly be winding down. Just was eavesdropping on a woman from Inside Edition asking another journalist if today's proceedings were actually over and he was about to come out, because everybody's looking for that visual of him, which is very, very brief. It's almost like a Michael Jackson sighting in the 2000s, where he'll just be going from the door of the courthouse, presumably to a sport utility vehicle. One aspect of a situation like this is, in a certain way, it kind of reminds me of doing war journalism and waiting around for a really long time, sometimes like a week or so, or maybe even more, for a battle to begin. And observing the press corps here today, so much of what they're doing is just standing around, talking, chewing gum, having a burrito, smoking cigarettes. It's like a part of news gathering is actually just doing nothing for long stretches of time and then waiting for that sort of burst of a moment when the situation all of a sudden becomes kinetic. Obviously, I'm certainly no legal expert by any stretch, but I imagine one of the most challenging things about the early days of these court proceedings is finding jurors who are sufficiently unbiased towards the former president, because he's such an intensely polarizing figure, and especially here in the borough of Manhattan. So who they pick and how they pick them is going to be really interesting, I think. One thing that I've been consistently overhearing since I got down here, which is very different than me trying to do a makeshift YouTube video, is that a lot of the big media down here have sources on the inside. They've got courtroom reporters who are, I don't know if they're inside the courtroom or just outside, but I'm hearing that people here are being fed information about what's going on inside the courtroom, which is helping to inform and detail their broadcasts. I don't have any such thing like that. I'm just here mainly people watching. Okay, less than, I believe, 30 minutes until the court closes. I can kind of sense the anticipation is growing here. People are getting in position, practicing their reports. I'm seeing like a lot of the field reporters from corporate media like ABC, NBC, CBS, and so forth. They're practicing their stand-ups. They are behind me. They're perfecting the lighting, getting their talking points together. I think they're trying to organize their thoughts before any kind of potential chaos or at least a scrum erupts as Trump exits the courthouse. Again, he'll probably be visible for just a handful of seconds, and he'll be flanked by Secret Service. So I don't know. Also, the light is changing, and the shadow is now, you can see a lot of the court building is now cast in shadow. So, and there's also this hideous scaffolding all along the front of the court building, so which doesn't exactly help image making opportunities. This is going to be really interesting. I'm getting a little giddy myself just to see kind of how the press reacts, actually. As members of the public aren't allowed near, this is the closest people can be. See some people have gathered here in the park behind the barricades. And I'm kind of in this no man's land between this fence and the police barricades, and no authority figure has said anything to me, so I'm kind of just going with it. I'm also not moving from where I am. With all the gear, anticipation, and snacks, the atmosphere here actually is kind of evocative of a movie set. Before the pandemic, I used to do some extra work on Hollywood films that were here in New York as a side hustle, and I was on a bunch of television shows as well. And this kind of reminds me of that. Like people have coolers with hip branded waters and fun sandwiches, and it reminds me kind of craft services when I was working on films. And also on films between takes, there's a lot of standing around, and that seems to be the bulk of what this afternoon has become. You probably can't see it in the GoPro, but maybe you can hear it, but there's a helicopter buzzing overhead. It's kind of an audible and visual symbol of the anticipation outside the courthouse. Less than 10 minutes until the courthouse closes. A major factor in Trump's enduring popularity since Biden became president in January of 2021 is the media's incessant coverage of him. Even though the media is portrayed, especially by Trump himself, as adversarial, he needs the media as adversaries or allies more than anything. Without the media, there would be no Trump. He is a creation of media in the 1980s, and the reality television craze of the 2000s. In fact, this is a random tidbit, but I actually worked on a season finale of The Apprentice when Trump was having his second wind as a sort of faux tycoon reality TV star. That was probably more than 15 years ago. So I've actually been around him a couple of times just through random gigs that I've worked here in New York, and he's somebody who cannot live. He cannot live without the media. He would wilt outside of the spotlight. It's now well after 5 o'clock, and I'm wondering if today will end with a whisper as opposed to a bang. Some of the news crews seem to be packing up, and I hear them talking about parking spots, you know, where the truck is located, and they're, you know, snapping their Pelican cases back together, while others are still waiting. Nobody seems to really know what's going on, which seems to be the case for the American polity writ large. Yeah, it's kind of been a non-event so far, but really interesting nonetheless. Now, the police have left their barricades that were keeping me out of the press pen earlier, but now it seems to be that anybody can walk through. There are a lot of office workers and ordinary city workers who are actually just passing up and down the sidewalk. So I'm finally out of the confines of the terribly uncreative Collect Pond Park, and now I'm a lot closer to the action, or lack thereof. Well, I just talked for a good 10 minutes with a super friendly CBS News camera tech, and he told me, in fact, he corrected the visual narrative that I was hoping to portray, that Trump actually entered and exited the rear of the building, but that the media were only allowed to set up camp here at the building's entrance. And so there actually was no chance of seeing the former president, apparently. But it was interesting nonetheless. He and I had a really great conversation about the incredibly deep polarization that's occurred in this country in the last 20-odd years. And yeah, he was telling me that the trial is expected to last about 6 weeks. And he said that he got here at 5 o'clock in the morning, and there were rumors that Trump was going to fire his head counsel, like at the last second, as sort of a stunt to delay the trial so that he could keep campaigning. But apparently that didn't happen. I also overheard somebody say that the day was a bit of a nothing burger, and that no jurors had actually been selected on this initial gathering in the courthouse. The former president is facing 34 felony counts in total of basically fudging business records in order to pay people off. And it's the counts are in the first degree, and this trial is supposed to be pretty serious, although as the CBS newsman I was talking to told me that he said he considered this trial a bit of a joke, because it wasn't enough to be a federal case, and now it's a local case here in New York, with the district attorney's office trying to really go hard after Trump, you know, in the countdown to the election. But, you know, whatever your political bent is, I think it's highly unlikely that any case like this is going to derail his campaign or dampen his popularity among his fervent supporters. So a lot remains to be seen. Just for sort of intellectual closure's sake, I came around the backside of the courthouse, where the guy from CBS told me that he'd heard that Trump had come in and out. I mean, he said he'd been here all day, and neither he nor any of the members of his crew had seen the former president. But it's tough to even see. There's so much fencing and netting and webbing. It's tough to see where he would have gone in or out. I'm guessing, there's a door Okay, I can see there's a door there. And of course the street's appropriately cordoned off by the NYPD. Oh, and here's this is very fitting. No parking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. So the whole week of the trial, this area is going to be blocked off. There is yet another possibility, which is that maybe Trump entered the building on the side here on Hogan Street. Who knows? Maybe I'll have to look at the photos and try and work backwards to figure it out. And if you want to see more content like this, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.